everybody. Welcome to our 2017 Ward 2 City Councilor debate. We have two brilliant candidates up there, so they're going to tell us what they want to do. Okay, this debate is organized by Highland Coalition. My name is Chish, and I am the co-chair of the Highland Coalition. So there is a lot of excitement tonight, but before we begin, I'm going to quickly explain some of the ground rules that we have for the debate tonight. Highland Coalition is going to tell us a little bit of what they do and who they are in a little bit, but before that, I think that each candidate will be given 2 minutes to present themselves and introduce themselves to the audience and tell us why they're here. And then we will have a moderator who will be asking the question to the candidate. She will ask question and follow up the question and lead the discussion. We also will have a timekeeper who will be visible to the candidates, so they will be telling them when their time is up for the question. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer the question and 30 seconds to follow up. If the candidate is called out for criticism and they want to respond, we will give them time to respond. We don't have that much time. We only have 1 hour. So any extra question that you have, we have a box at the desk. You can put your question in the box with a means of which the candidate can return the answer to you, and we will make sure that they get the answer. So before we begin, I would like to invite David Gass, the director of Highland Coalition. He will come up and tell us who is the Highland Coalition and what they do. Give it up to David.
Almost 11 years ago, we started down at Union Street. We rebuilt the gross floor building into condominiums. Before the Highlands Coalition existed, actually, it was a nonprofit. And then we planted trees coming up to the school, and the principal, Dr. Crane, invited us to the school to hold meetings. And the way we got people to meetings was we planted a tree in front of the house and then asked them, would you come to the meeting? So we were giving them something before they were getting anything, you know? I mean, that's pretty good. And we came up to the meetings. We had meetings here on all the issues in the neighborhood. What was the concerns of the neighborhood, all the way from the housing issue, the crisis around foreclosures, which was beginning at the time, to the issue of domestic violence, to the issue of the school, this being a community school at the time. And so it was brought a lot of neighbors together. We did have one major problem because a woman had been killed on the High Rock Street, and we rallied we packed this place with probably 500-600 people. The mayor came, and chief of police, and we talked about peace in the city. How could we rally for that? And we marched to City Hall. That was our first move. There were probably several hundred people. And we built a garden at the school, which won more awards at the Topsfield Fair than ever in history. And we're educating the children on everything from science to nutrition. This was a NASA school, and only the second one in New England, thanks to Dr. Crane bringing in NASA. It was a school where, being a community school, it was at night hundreds of adults getting GED and ESL. We had after-school programs, many programs here that don't exist at this point. But the idea was to educate the neighborhood and to help solve problems. So we moved to, when Dr. Crane retired, we had to move to Cook Street Park. We have a garden there. You can see it, and you're welcome to come and visit us. And it's the first one in the city park, thanks to Steve Babbitt, and supported it, and Parks Commission. And the first one is City Park in many, many years, and now there's several. So we felt we were innovators. We also help people who are being foreclosed on, and we hold a big protest. Lynn United for Change would bring people in, we bring a bank in to buy the house and sell it back to them for half the mortgage. That was several good victories, because this was the center of foreclosures in Lynn, and one of the largest foreclosure rate in Essex County. So there were a number of problems we were trying to deal with at one time. And right now, we're focused on the elections, because voting is power. And voting is very low in this neighborhood. It got down to 9% during an important election. That's very low. Voting was right here at the school. We'll explain it as we go along, because it's one of our questions is about voting and returning voting to the Highlands, which we'll explain. I'll leave it a mystery at this moment, okay? But am I out of time? Where's the timekeeper? Timekeeper's coming? Yeah, you're gonna wait. Oh, 1 minute left. Okay, thank you. You're fired. All right, give me 2 minutes. All right, so anyway, any questions we can ask afterwards, but this is the essence of what we're trying to do, is empower the neighborhood, which is a largely immigrant neighborhood. All our families are immigrants. My father was an immigrant, and so we understood what it meant to support immigrants in every possible way we could, and also to encourage people to get organized into a neighborhood group, such as Neighborhood Watch. Peter's part of Neighborhood Watch on Allen Avenue, and so we want to do more of this. So thank you very much for coming, and let's move on.
Thank you very much, David. Now I'm going to invite the candidates to to introduce themselves. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Stabar.
Start with the lady.
Oh, correction. The ladies first. The ladies first. That's a gentleman. All right. So.
Hi, I'm Gina O'Toole. First of all, I'd like to thank the Highlands Coalition for inviting us to have this debate tonight. I'm a resident of Ward 2. I've been in the Fayette State since 1993, my husband Mark and I. The Highlands is not just part of Ward 2. My family lives here. I have an aunt that lives on East Highland Ave, and I have cousins that live on Lookout Terrace right around the corner. So I'm very familiar with the area. I'm running for Ward 2 Councilor because I know this city can be a better place to live in for all, and I know the last few years have been very tough. Our city is in a financial crisis right now. We are looking at an $8 to $9 million deficit. Some people say that. I looked at the budget online that shows a $3 million budget deficit. I'm not happy with that, and I'm not happy with the answers I've been getting from the residents of the neighborhood. People aren't happy. Their streets aren't paved, their sidewalks are not safe, the public trees are not cut back, they've been neglected. I will be able to be a full-time ward counselor. I am a paraprofessional. I work for the Lynn Public Schools. I'm at Connery. In accordance to the Lynn City Charter, I have to take a leave of absence from my job. I cannot have a city job and be in an elected position. So I will be available as a full-time counselor. I have been given out my home phone number and my email, and I will be able to take the time to meet with residents and constituents, to sit with them, to listen to their concerns. I will also be available to go with them to City Hall and help them in any capacity that they may need. And I look forward to your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Rick Stobbard, and I'd like to thank the Highland Coalition for hosting the debate tonight. My time on the school committee, I participated in a few here. And when I was on the school committee, I spent quite a bit of time here as an advocate for the Highland Coalition and the Ford School and the Ford School Garden, working with Dr. Crane. I'm a local business owner. I grew up in Lynn all my life, grew up in Neptune Towers, married to my wonderful wife, Lois. Our two beautiful daughters, Jess and Steph, are here as well. Local business owner, started my company when I was 19, been in business for 35 years, Rick's Auto Collision in Revere. I spent 14 years as a teacher at Lynn Tech, mentoring hundreds of youth, some of whom are now starting their own businesses, buying homes and land, raising families. I served 6 years on the Lynn School Committee, again, advocating for vocational education and for places like the Highlands and the Ford School and the unique programs that go on here. I currently serve on the Lynn EDIC Board of Directors. I serve on the Lynn Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. I also chair the Workforce and Economic Development Committee, where we are trying to get jobs for adults through job training. I'm the president of the board of the Lynn Youth Street Outreach Advocacy, Christ Church, Grace United Methodist Church, Board of Trustees. I'm very involved in the community, and I'm running because we need experience and qualified people on the Lynn City Council. Right now, we have no business people, but everybody says that we need to attract more businesses into Lynn. I think we have to have business people on the council experienced in dealing with developers, dealing with commercial property owners, and that's what I hope to bring to the Lynn City Council, my qualifications and my experience. Thank you.
Thank you to the candidate. Now, without further delay, I'm going to introduce our moderator, Helen, who is sitting up there with the candidate, to begin the debate.
Thank you. I'm Ellen Morgan, and I was born and raised in Lynn, and I want to thank you for having me as a mediator tonight. Councilors are elected to make decisions on behalf of their constituencies. The ward councilor makes sure that concerns related to their ward are represented on council. They are expected to hold regular public meetings within their ward. Question 1. Voting in the Highlands will be given to Rick, will have the first response. Voting in the Highlands increased when the Ford School was a polling place. However, in 2004, the City Council removed voting from the school. Ward 2 voters had to vote at St. Pius, and Ward 4 voters at North Shore Community College. Voting dropped, hitting a low in 2015 of 9% of voters, compared to 17% for the city. In 2014, we appealed to Human Rights Commission to restore voting. Although the commission voted in our favor, City Council President refused to consider moving the polling place. Last year, Councilor Nat Colucci and Chakoudas and Representative Cahill convinced Council to restore voting at Kip Academy on High Rock Street. The question is, do you favor voting for Ward 2 precinct at Kip Academy?
Precinct 4.
I mean precinct 4. Yeah. Sorry. This is Ward 2, precinct 4. Okay.
So, all my time I spent up here working with the Highlands Coalition and the Ford School, I was always an advocate for voting here at the Ford School. Can you hear me?
No. Oh, I'm sorry.
Should I start over? As I was saying, during my time on the school committee, and I was up here working with the Ford School and the Highland Coalition, I was always an advocate for voting here at the Ford School. And then somehow that got lost, ramp problems, handicap issues and all, and it didn't happen. And you're right, the voting in Precinct 4 is pretty low. In 2015, out of 1,500 registered voters, we had 200 vote. In 2015, we had 100 vote in this past primary. Those numbers are pretty consistent with Precinct 3 as well. 1 and 2, a little bit higher. As I look at now Ward 3 voting at Marshall, which is in Ward 3 and no longer at English, having Ward 2 voters, I think, down at English makes more sense because it's actually in Ward 2 and it's actually closer to a lot of folks that live in 2-4. I think English is closer to a lot of folks in 2-4 than even Kip is. You know, Ford School was at the hub kind of 2-4. KIPP down the other side of the hill, and English is right down that way. So if you live at the base of, you know, Adams and Allen and Jefferson and Chestnut and Eade Street and Cook Street, I think English is probably the place to go. But we need to get voters voting up in this area. That's job number one. And when you can do that, you can justify another polling place, but it's hard to justify, especially in this financial climate in the city, to staff another polling place for 150, 200 voters. I would say English would be the primary spot right now.
I agree with Rick. Lynn English is in Ward 2. It is centrally located in the ward, and I'm in favor of making it easier for any and all registered voters to get to the polls. If that means putting 2-4 at KIPP, that's fine. Put 2-4 at KIPP. Put 2-3, 2-2 at English with 2-1. St. Pius is Ward 1. We need our own polling place in Ward 2, and I would love to have that to be available. Like I said, to all voters should have access to polling places. Thank you.
Question 2. Highlanders pay more than $3 million in property taxes, yet only one street has been paved in the last 4 years. This year, 34 Lynn streets were paved. Most were in areas where voting was much higher, such as Ward 1. The streets around this school are in the far worst condition and endanger drivers and children. Would you insist that DPW pave streets around the Ford School, Rock, Hamilton, and Beacon Hill Avenues? Answer questions for Gina.
Hi. I definitely would advocate to have the streets paved around Ford School. I had a meeting with Andy Hall, and that was one of the main concerns of the constituents across the ward of the conditions of the streets. Andy told me that the worst come first. And I explained to him that during my walks and talks with a lot of people throughout Ward 2, I feel like Ward 2 has been neglected. And especially around elementary schools, the streets should be paved. The sidewalks also need to be taken care of. There are a lot of cracks in the sidewalks, overgrown trees, broken fences, and just the school grounds altogether need to be better taken care of than they have been. Like I said, I definitely would advocate to have all the streets paved, but there's no money for all the streets to be paved. So most importantly, definitely near and around the elementary schools for the safety of the children.
I agree with Mrs. O'Toole. We talk to the same people, we see the same streets. There have been a few that have been repaved, but certainly we need to prioritize the worst and the ones that are around schools that have little ones crossing the street and all. What stuck out to me the most, and I don't know if it was ever fixed because I asked about it a few years back, was actually the sidewalk out there on Rock Ave. It was in the area where the little ones were picked up to take down to the early ed center. And I don't know if that sidewalk ever got fixed, but that is what stuck out to me is something that needs to be fixed. I think even for here, even more than the streets immediately around here. But if I'm elected, I'll work with everybody to prioritize the streets, get them on the list because that's what we have to do. But as Mrs. O'Toole said, given the current budget constraints in the city of Lynn and our revenue generating problems, it's going to be a challenge to get them done. But we can work at it.
Question 3 will go to Rick. We should pay no more than 30% of our income on housing. However, most Lynners pay more than 50% of their income on housing. The mayor says there is enough affordable housing. City Council gave developers of apartments in Central Square a tax break of at least $800,000, although none of the units will be affordable. Will you vote for a tax break to developers who create no affordable units?
Read the last part of that question. would I support tax breaks?
Will you vote for a tax break to developers who create no affordable units?
Okay. So yes, a TIF was given to not only the vault building, but also the South Harbor project. I am personally not a fan of TIF agreements to residential properties, but we do need to get shovels in the dirt and get some development going. Now that site down there at the old Beacon site, the South Harbor site, I want to say that in the next 30 years, if that sits undeveloped, it'll generate $3.5 million in those 30 years in tax revenue. Even with the current TIF that was given to those developers, and they said that that was the only way that they could get bank financing, that property with the TIF, 10-year TIF, will generate $46 million over the next 30 years. So even though they got a tax break, it's going to be a win. Not only is it going to be a win, it's going to bring, and we need to bring people with disposable incomes into the city. We need to create more market rate housing. Market rate housing doesn't mean $3 grand a month. Market rate housing means what the market will bear. And we need to develop more market rate housing. We have, you know, I'm for affordable housing, but we have a lot of affordable housing in this city as compared to other communities. And we need to bring people into this community that have disposable income, that are not going to have children to burden the school systems, would drive up our net school spending costs, that are going to spend money in land, that will spur more development, stores, restaurants, things other than dollar stores and fast food restaurants into the city, because we need that desperately, and that's how we're going to start to grow our commercial tax base that's so desperately needed in this city.
I believe that if the tax incentive or the linkage is beneficial to the city, absolutely. If it generates more income for Lynn, absolutely. But you can't have a lot more housing development. You need to bring in private companies, industry. Right now, the city is looking to put a package together to bring Amazon into Lynn. To me, that's what we really need. We need commercial-based tax rate. The superintendent of school, Kathy Latham, has been quoted recently as to saying, with all the development that's happening in the city council and the mayor needs to focus more on bringing in commercial tax rate businesses. The schools are busting at the seams, and you cannot tell people when you rent them an apartment or sell them a condo, you cannot bring children into the city. You can't have children because we want to attract just adults that have big income jobs. That's discrimination. When you are developing the city, we really need to focus more on bringing in Amazon, bringing in other types of businesses. We need to, go after GE and find out what plans they have for their future. We need a city planner. We need a planning department to help us build our city. We are in a crisis right now. We are in one of Lynn's worst financial crises that it has ever seen in its history. And we really need to get a team together that's going to bring in development, commercial tax rate business, and move forward. And we really need to take a good look at what's going on in City Hall and listen to the report the PFM group did and take some of their advice, because their advice is, to me, was, quite worth listening to. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 4.
Can I say something on this? Just respond one thing.
What? 2 minutes. Half a second, David.
I just want to say the position of the Highlands Coalition is very much in support of people moving in, market rate housing, and disposable income. We need that badly. We need commercial people to come in, business to come into the city.
Needed a business after GE left, going from 15,000 workers to 3,000 workers. We lost a tremendous tax base there. All we were saying was, should we give tax benefits to multi-million-dollar companies that will make millions of dollars on what they're doing? Because the shift has been away from affordable housing to market rate housing. Government funds, that's all we were saying. Just quick response to that.
question 4 will go to Gina. Only 12% or 1 in 10 city workers, including City Hall, DPW, police, and fire, are people of color. However, more than 60% of the people of Lynn are, and 80% of Highlanders are people of color. The city spends millions on contracts each year, yet there is no requirement for people of color are hired, that people of color are hired. Will you work to increase the number of qualified people of color who work for the city?
Absolutely. The City of Lynn has a residency requirement. This City Hall, I would be in full support of best qualified candidates, preferably people who can speak multiple languages. In the City of Lynn, I know some people have said that there's over 30 languages spoken, but in the Lynn Public Schools, there are close to 90 languages spoken in the City of Lynn. The multilingual person, to me, would be the most highly qualified candidate, as long as they had the educational and the background that would follow suit. Currently, Mayor Kennedy has mentioned that she has hired more minorities than any other mayor in the history of Lynn, and I am in support of that. And the residents and the police and the fire, they have requested specific civil service lists that are geared towards minorities, Spanish-speaking, and Khmer-speaking, Russian-speaking, different people from different backgrounds to, you know, apply for jobs. And they pretty much go to the top of the list. And I would think that would be a high, a requirement that would be needed, especially in Lynn City Hall with all the different groups that live in the city. Lynn has always been a welcoming city for every types of, you know, immigrants coming in. And I feel that the face of City Hall should reflect that.
Thank you.
I agree with Mrs. O'Toole. You know, a lot of the jobs, the public safety jobs are civil service, so those lists go through and people are quantified on that list, a lot of times by military experience, by race, but in jobs like City Hall, even teaching. I think teaching is one of the most important areas in the city where I wish we could attract more people of color and get our kids that graduate to get into education, because they make such great role models. When the population of our students can look at somebody from the Dominican Republic as their teacher and say, hey, I can do that. They came here as a kid like me. You know, that's what we need to do, is get them in our schools. But our City Hall should definitely reflect the population in the city. And I would hope that if people are applying, that they're not being disqualified for that reason, because if that's happening, I would do everything in my power to stop it. But I really hope that it's not. But we need to make sure that people are applying, that people know how to find those jobs, where the city posts those jobs, so that we have an abundance of applicants and that we can choose from and pick the best applicants. But if they're applying from the city because they have to live in the city per our residency, then they should be a makeup of the population of the city.
Question 5 will go to Rick. Neighborhood Watch can bring neighbors together to get to know and help each other, clean up their streets and reduce crime. Will you help us organize neighborhood watch groups in the Highlands? If so, will you sign an agreement to work with us?
That's a no-brainer. Absolutely, and I've said this as I've been walking around, and I've had long discussions with people like Josie Santos about that very issue. It makes everybody's job easier. It makes a councilor's job easier. It makes the police department's job easier. When you have people watching out for each other. And I thought it was interesting yesterday, there was an article in the paper about Mayor Arrigo rolling out, and it's not really Revere rolling it out, but he kind of brought it to light, that that Next Door program, where it's an app online where you put your street together as a neighborhood watch group, and it's free. And anybody can do that now if you go on the nextdoor.com program and start to put those together. But I'll do everything I can. I'll bring the coffee. If you want healthy snacks like tonight, my daughter made those little pumpkin gluten-free cupcakes. I'll bring those too, but I would do everything in my power to get the neighborhoods together to form neighborhood watches. It only makes sense. It's great for everybody.
Thank you. Gina?
I agree with Fred. What he was talking about with Revere just initiated was the 311. And Lynn applied for it, Judy applied for it, well, the Mayor Kennedy applied for it in January, so it's coming. It just hasn't come to fruition yet in Lynn. I absolutely would meet and I would organize and help with you, and I would definitely come to your monthly meetings. I will also seek funding for any available grants for watch groups. I know they're available through the city, and I would be a liaison with the Lynn Police Department. I would definitely include them. I had a meeting with Chief McGarry a few weeks ago, and he's all for community watch groups, and he said that he would help me in any way that he could get together with the residents of the city, and he would actually want to be included in some of the neighborhood watch meetings. So I look forward to that, because I call myself, and I know there are a few of them around Ward 2, the Gladys Kravitz of the neighborhood. There are those neighbors that do have an eye on the neighborhood. I have received a lot of information from my husband, plate numbers, street, different streets, different occasions, what's going on, who's watching who's speeding, who's selling drugs, who's picking up hookers, and who's, and throughout the ward. It's not just the Highlands. It's in the Fay Estate, it's in 2-1, it's in 2-2, it's in 2-3, it's on Gertrude Street, it's everywhere. And the neighbors want to get together, and they want to organize to have the watch groups, and I'm 100% behind that.
Thank you.
Can I clarify something? Can I just clarify something?
Yeah, Rick wants another minute.
I wasn't talking about the 311 program. I was talking about the 311 program in Revere, and I'm a Revere property owner, is for communications with City Hall to report problems. This is an app that ties neighbors together where you can, if you see a car break, that you can put it out there and people are alerted to it. If you're having a yard sale, people are alerted to it, and it kind of, it's the Facebook version of tying your neighborhood together. And it's open to anybody. Revere mentioned it, but it's open to anybody. It was in the paper yesterday. And Mayor Arrigo is pretty good at jumping ahead of technology on that stuff.
That's another thing too. In the ward, can I have a second?
Yep.
In the ward, I ran across a lot of senior citizens that do not have access to technology. They don't do Facebook, they don't have an email, they don't have a laptop, they don't have an iPad, they don't have an iPhone, they do not have a cell phone. The only thing, a lot of the seniors that I've run across only have a landline. So that landline is their lifeline, and that's what makes community watch groups so important, is to organize and get the senior citizens involved and get their phone numbers, because they have absolutely no technology whatsoever.
Can you sign this?
Sure.
I want to thank both Gina and Rick for being here tonight, and I want to say thank you for having me as the mediator. And I think Tish will finish up.
Right, excuse me, I handed out to you the agreement that we want the candidates to sign concerning neighborhood watch. If you look in the back side of that, you'll see how we try to organize groups in the neighborhood. But the agreement reads, we can create safer neighborhoods by forming neighborhood watch groups. If I'm elected to Council of Ward 2 in Lynn, I will work with the Highlands Coalition to form neighborhood watch groups in the Highlands. I will help by working with the coalition to identify streets that could be organized, contact residents about meetings, contact city departments such as DPW and ISD and other places like that, attend meetings from time to time. Let's work together to make the Highlands a safer, cleaner, and friendlier place to live. And I've asked the candidates to sign this and work with us. Oh, thank you. Any other questions that were written down that people want to ask? read? Why don't you do a closing and and then I'll look over the questions, okay? Maybe one other question, right? Any chance?
Okay, well, once again, thank you for everybody coming out. Thank you to the Highland Coalition. We are going to have a couple of other questions, I guess. Again, I'm running because of my perspective. When I ran for school committee, it was because I felt that there was a perspective lacking on the school committee and in Lynn School Administration, and because of me running, we were able to get the machine shop program open that is putting kids into high-paying jobs. We're educating adults for high-paying jobs, and we brought attention to that. Every candidate, Mrs. O'Toole said it tonight, we need to expand our commercial tax base in Lynn. I am the only candidate running for Ward 2 that is a successful business person. I sit on the Chamber of Commerce. I chair the Economic and Workforce Development Committee. I sit on the Lynn EDIC board. I talk to developers. I talk to investors. A lot of the Lynnway property owners are guys that I have their cell phones in my pocket. I talk to them on a regular basis, but they feel that they have no representation. I want to be that representation. I want to bring that unique perspective to the Lynn City Council. If I didn't feel that my perspective, that my qualifications were not unique and needed, please believe me, I wouldn't be running. But when everybody's crying for more commercial development, more businesses in the city of Lynn, shouldn't somebody on the city council be experienced at that very thing? I'd appreciate your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Hi. We had a business owner for the last 18 years as our Ward 2 councilor. And that business communication and bringing in businesses to the city is the councilor at large responsibility. The core responsibility of a ward councilor is constituent service. And also we do work with the mayor and we work with at large, but our first and foremost responsibility is to listen to the constituents and take care of their needs and their wants and their concerns. I have a business background. I have a degree in business administration. I have an idea. I know how to communicate with adults during a meeting and be able to meet with people coming in that want to bring business to the city. That is the mayor's responsibility. It is the councilor at large responsibility to bring corporations and business into the city. I don't repeat myself, the core responsibility for a ward councilor are the constituents of the ward. And this ward has already had a business owner for the last 18 years. And we know what shape the city's in, and I bring a different perspective. I am a homeowner, I am a taxpayer, I am a people person. I have taken the time to meet and talk to several constituents. I have met with Andy Hall, and I gave him a list of different things around the ward. And I've seen a lot of those concerns already taken care of, and I'm very proud of the work that I've already done, and I haven't even been elected yet. So I look forward to your vote on November 7th, and look forward to being the next Ward 2 Lynn councilor. Thank you.
We have a couple of questions from the audience. One, a number of questions we already dealt with, which has to do with affordable housing, so I just want to bypass that and get to this other question. Will you encourage the city to support undocumented students going to college and being fully supported in our community? Why don't we have 1 minute each? Can handle this question in 1 minute? Shall I read it again?
Would we support?
Will you encourage the city to support undocumented students going to college and being fully supported in our community? I'll just mention one thing, because one of our closest friends graduated Lynn Tech and was told she could not go to college because she was undocumented. And so for 3 years she worked and then found out she could and became a top student at North Shore Community College. And since then she got married. She applied to DACA and was accepted, and she's on the road to becoming a full citizen of this country. And that's very important to us in this neighborhood that has a lot of undocumented people that are afraid of what's happening right now in this country. So that's a question, okay? Okay, will you encourage the city to support undocumented students going to college and being fully supported in our community?
Right now, undocumented students can go to college freely without any encumbrances. I don't think it's within the purview of the city council to adopt a resolution to that when anybody can go to any college. I don't know what happened with that young lady, but undocumented students can go to college at any time now, as it is now.
Gina?
Undocumented students aren't eligible for grants and scholarships and different awards that citizens get. That's why I was very happy when Maria Carrasco asked me to be part of the selections committee for the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. And I have read several scholarships from different students, and a few of them are DACA kids. And those are the children that we gave the awards to, and they have been just outstanding students, and they've gone on to college, and they've been, grateful for the help that the Hispanic funds, the scholarship has given them. The Lynn Public Schools right now, we have a safe school in place for undocumented students, and it was passed with the school committee a few months ago. We haven't received our training yet in the Lynn Public Schools. We are expecting it, and I think it's coming on November 7th, so I'll have to miss it because I will be at the polls. So I'm very excited with the future. The city of Lynn, we are protecting our undocumented students, and I would carry that on through the Lynn City Council, and I would encourage that.
Thank you. Are there any more questions?
All right, so that's it for tonight. I wanted to thank our candidate, Mr. Rick Starbuck and Ms. Gina O'Toole. Thank you for your time and thank you for coming. I also wanted to let you know that next Wednesday, October 25th, we're going to also hold a mayoral debate at KIPP Academy. And I would love to see all of you there and few more of our neighborhood. So let's continue this fight and this work for the betterment of our neighborhood. Thank you so much. If you have a question, please just give it to us.